live, Chair.
Thank you, and a very good morning to everybody, and welcome to this morning's Licensing Subcommittee, Tuesday the 19th of July 2022 at 10 o'clock. And first we start with the election of chair. I am the chairman of the Licensing Committee per se, so I'm deemed to be the presiding person here today, and I need to elect a chair for the purposes of this subcommittee meeting. So may I have nominations for chairman, please, from the councillors?
Councillor George Farquhar, may I nominate yourself, Councillor Butt, for chair?
Thank you very much, Councillor Farquhar, and may I have a second, please?
I'll second that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So that's done. Moving on to our next point, which is housekeeping. I'll ask our clerk, please, Jill, if you take us through that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chair will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Hollyoak. Moving on then to any declarations of interest. I'll ask in turn. Councillor Farquhar, do you have any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. I have none.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Williams, do you have any declarations of interest?
I don't, thank you.
Thank you very much. And for completeness, I have no declarations of interest either, Ms Hollyoak. So declarations of interest, there are none. So grateful thanks must be given to Councillor David Kelsey and Dwayne Farr, who kindly have stood in today as our reserve members. We have a couple of reserve members who come in to sit just in case other members are unable to be here or are taken unwell. I'm afraid the bad news is you will need to stay with us until the next application. You can make yourselves available just in case that does happen. But you're free to stay to hear the meeting if you so wish, and we look forward to seeing you at a later stage for the next application as reserves in that capacity. Thank you. So we have received for public speaking, and that protocol for public speaking is as agenda item 4 in your pack, and you should see there with regard to what happens with regard to virtual meetings. Moving on then to the substantive, which is item 5, Sobo Beach, Solent Promenade, Southbourne Coast Road. An application has been received for a new premises licence for the premises known as Sobo Beach, Solent Beach, Southbourne Coast Road. This matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'd now like to ask everybody, although we've heard a few names, if they'd like to introduce themselves and say what their role is, and for councillors if they'd like to mention their ward. Sorry if I've got some bonging going on in the background, but I've got some emails popping up. So my name's Councillor Judes Butt. I'm chair of the Licensing Committee and I'm chair of this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Thank you. Councillor Farquhar.
Councillor George Farquhar, I represent Boscombe East and Folkestone, and I'm a panel member today.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Williams.
I'm Councillor Lawrence Williams. I represent Littledown and Iford ward, and I'm a member of the Licensing Board and Committee.
Thank you very much. And Ms Tanya Jardine.
Hello, good morning. Tanya Jardine, Licensing Officer for BCP Council, and I'm the officer that dealt with this application.
Thank you very much. And Ms Graham.
Good morning all. Sandra Graham, solicitor from Trethowan, representing the applicant, which is Mace Maid Limited, and I have with me Mr Richard Slater. Can I just say at this stage that Mr Richard Slater and Mr Kim Slater are not related. Mr Richard Slater is the general manager. Mr Kim Slater is the director for Mace Maid Limited.
I'm sure it had no bearing, but it's useful to have that information. Thank you, Miss Graham. And Mr. Richard Slater, you've been so introduced, so I'll move on to Mr. Kim Slater.
Yeah, I'm Kim Slater, the representing the application for Macemaid.
Okay, and you are the director.
I'm the director, sole director.
Thank you very much for this. Now we have no objectors with us, although we do have 3 objections. They're not in attendance. We do have, for purposes to support Miss Graham with regard to her application, because of the historic background to the application, having sat with BCP, we've got Mr. Nick Maguire. So Nick, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please, and the purposes as to why you're here today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Nick Maguire. I'm the Contracts Officer for the Seafront for BCP Council, and I'm here because the council desired to put a new offering on the site of the old bistro building when it was demolished, and obviously we would like that to have a premise license. So yes, there was a historic premise license that came with the bistro site that was transferred into the council's name, has subsequently been transferred into the Macemaid's remit, and that has different conditions to the application that's being heard today.
Yes, we're aware of the variation, but we're not here to consider that today for informational purposes. But you're here to give us some background if Miss Slater should so wish. The members won't be asking you any questions per se, Mr. Maguire. That'll be at Miss Slater's discretion as to what she needs you to advise us on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne McNamara.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Joanne McNamara, Team Leader of the Litigation Team, BCP Council, and I'm the Legal Advisor to the subcommittee today.
Thank you very much, Ms. McNamara. And last and by no means least, Jill Hollyoak.
Morning, I'm Jill Hollyoak. I'm clerk to the subcommittee today.
Thank you, Jill. And Jill is extremely hot and a huge, so we're going to be as quick as we can today for her, bless her. So just to refer then, all persons who have been given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, and any person who wishes to withdraw representation or wishes not to speak, please identify yourself now. If you'd like to raise your hand. Okay, all are content. Item 7. I'll now go through the proposed procedure for order of speaking for the hearing as follows, and it's fairly straightforward. The licensing officer will present her report. The applicant will make their application. There'll be questions of the applicant by all party, and the members of the subcommittee will go first. The responsible authority or other persons will make representation. We don't have any today, and there'll be questions of those, but we don't have any, so there'll be no questions. But the councillors, the subcommittee members, will do their best to try and extrapolate from the objections on behalf of the objectors so that their voice is put forward. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk. Notification of subcommittee's decision, as it's a remote meeting, will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held, in accordance with the regulations, which is from today. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'd just like to ask all parties now to confirm agreement of proposed procedure or make representations. Miss Graham, are you content?
Yes, thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And Mr. Kim Slater, are you content?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Richard Slater, are you content?
Yes.
And for the purposes of the fact that you're here, Mr. Maguire, are you so content?
I am indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Jardim, are you content?
Yes, thank you.
And Mrs. McNamara, are you content?
I am, Chair. Thank you.
That was a long way to try.
Yeah, my mouse was on my
Yes.
monitor and I couldn't get it across to the laptop. Thank you, Chair.
No. Okay, so moving on to number 8, finally, I'd just like to remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand upon their written representations, and all questions to come through the chair, please, and no cross-examination of parties. I know it's tempting, but please don't. So I'll now ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Jardim, if she would kindly present a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application before you today is to consider whether to grant a new premises licence at Sobo Beach on Solent Promenade, Southbourne Coast Road. The premises is situated on the site of where Bistro on the Beach used to be. The building housing Bistro on the Beach was demolished and now consists of a temporary structure whilst awaiting development. However, the licence for the site still remains and currently permits regulated entertainment indoors in the form of live and recorded music, performance of dance and activities like music and dance. This is Monday to Saturday, 1500 to 0000 hours, and Sunday, 1500 to 2330 hours. Late night refreshments, Monday to Saturday, 2300 to 030 hours, and Sunday, 2300 to 0000 hours. And the supply of alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Saturday, 1000 to 0000 hours, and Sunday, 1000 to 2330 hours. The current licence cannot be used in its current form as the licence plan is not accurate and does not reflect the current structure. The applicant Mace Made Limited is seeking a new premises licence to cover the temporary structure and to permit the provision of live and recorded music indoors and outdoors, Monday to Sunday, 1200 to 2200 hours, and the supply of alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 1000 to 2200 hours, and also for non-standard timings on Good Friday, Christmas Day and New Year's Eve. The licensing office received 3 representations against the application. This was from other persons, and it was on the grounds that the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder and public nuisance licensing objectives. Mediation took place between the applicant's solicitor and Dorset Police, and also with environmental health and conditions as listed on the report and at Appendix 5 were agreed. Since writing my report, I have received communication from Ms Graham and the Environmental Health Officer that following mediation, they omitted to list timings on the last agreed condition, and it should now read, no waste or recyclable materials, including bottles, shall be moved, removed from, or placed in the outside areas by the operator between 2300 hours and 0800 hours on the following day. This condition does not apply to commercial waste services collecting any such materials. We received no representations from any other responsible authorities or other persons. Subsequent to receiving representations, Ms Graham, on behalf of the applicant, applied to transfer the current premises licence from BCP Council to Mace Made Limited, and also applied to vary the licence in order to update the licence plan. This application is currently in its consultation period. Members are asked to consider whether to grant the application for a new premises licence for Sobo Beach, and should the licence be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence and any conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any responsible authorities or other persons may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Jardim. So members, do we have any questions on points of fact for Ms Jardim? Councillor Williams, any questions on points of fact?
No, thank you, not at this stage.
And Councillor Farquhar?
No questions, Chair.
Okay, just for clarification, and thank you, Mrs Jardim, with regard to condition 4, which was offered from environment, I had actually got bottle clearance times there. Could you just clarify, please, what those times were? Did you say 2300 hours to 0800 hours? Noted. So members, are you clear on those timings, please? You might want to drop them down to see if they are suitable and if those are the hours that we would be happy to so accept. Thank you. I don't have any questions. So moving on then to ask if the applicant has any questions of Mrs Jardim with regard to points of fact.
No, Madam, not at this stage, thank you.
None? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it's time for you now, Miss Graham, to make your application. I'd be grateful if you could be as clear as you can with regard to the application, because we have the variation which sits in there but doesn't actually sit in there. So it's like the elephants in the room. It's been stated, but it doesn't actually apply. So if you'd be clear in your submission, please, as to which bit you're actually applying for, we'd be extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. Then briefly, the premises known as Bistro on the Beach have been demolished, as you've heard. And whilst the council are proposing to redevelop the site, they offered a tender for any responsible operator who was known in the area to apply for this tender and to run the premises now until the end of 2023 on the current schedule. Whilst I'll explain the proposal shortly, the new application was submitted initially rather than a variation of the existing licence for various legal reasons, and also so that we could tailor the conditions relevant to the new proposal, as the existing conditions on the existing licence did not exactly correspond with the proposed operation. And I'll mention at that stage that the tender was for an outdoor operation because it was on the beach and not an indoor operation. And for that reason, the conditions were felt better to be redrafted in terms of a new application. However, once the representations had come in, it was considered prudent, shall I say, to deal with a transfer of the existing licence and the variation application as backups should anything happen to the new application, because obviously everyone is anxious to get the premises up and running, given firstly the shortness of time in which the premises will operate in this format, and secondly the need and the anxiousness really of the applicant to gain the most of the summer season, given that we only have 2 summer seasons on the beach and this proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Graham, and I'll allow you to continue a minute. Just to be absolutely clear, so this is for a new premise licence and the other matter is not something we're considering today, but for informational purposes, you gave us that background. I'm grateful. You have the floor.
Indeed, thank you. Well, as you've heard, during the period of consultation, conditions have been agreed with both the police and the environmental health officer, which we hoped and still hope deal with all aspects of antisocial behaviour, crime and disorder, and any potential noise nuisance, which is in effect the hub of the representations we've received from 3 residents. I have, and I'm aware your licensing officer has endeavoured to mediate with these residents, and following the licensing officer's attempts herself, she suggested that I wrote to the residents, which I did, inviting them to attend the premises, meet the general manager, and see on the ground, so to speak, the proposals. 2 of the residents, who I am assuming from the same surname may well be husband and wife, and their response was that we are both away in Spain until mid-August. So I'm assuming that 2 of the responses are from the same couple. The third response, or the third invitation I offered to Mrs. Valerie Dickings, the third person making the representation, received no response, although I did have a read receipt that my email to her had been acknowledged. So if I may start by briefly outlining the application, if I may. The premises licenses sought for live and recorded music, although it is anticipated live music will not be a main feature of the premises at all. And we're really looking at background music during the hours of operation. The hours sought, as you'll see, are 12 noon to 10 p.m. and the supply of alcohol 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I'd ask you please to note at that stage that these hours, albeit that there's more outdoor space, these hours are actually less than the existing bistro on the beach license, wherein the live and recorded music is permitted to run until midnight, 23:30 on Sundays, and in addition, supply of alcohol until midnight, 23:30 on Sundays. And indeed, the existing bistro on the beach license permits late night refreshments until midnight, which of course, if we're closing at 10 p.m, we don't need any late night refreshment license. So obviously the hours that I'm now applying for are less than they have been under the existing operation. As mentioned, that the difference is here that more of the operation is in terms of outdoor space. However, the specification in the tender from BCP Council was for an outdoor restaurant and bar for these 2 years. And my clients, having been successful in that tender, have delivered, I would suggest, exactly what the council had suggested. Bistro on the Beach traded successfully for some 15 years and closed last October in order for redevelopment. The council in its tender looked to create what they described as a pop-up restaurant to serve residents and visitors in the area for a temporary period until the end of 2023. The tender sought bids from those who had a proven track record in hospitality services, which my clients have, and they do operate other popular, well-known, prominent and permanent bars and restaurants in the area. Since successfully winning the tender in April, they have worked extremely hard in a very short time frame to have the premises up and running for this summer season, as was the wish of the council. The premises provide various seating areas, some on the ground. It's quite an unusual arrangement, but a very attractive one.
Miss Graham, I'll just stop you there. Members, if you want to go to page 37 of Appendix 1, you'll see the layout there. So yes, I'd be grateful if you take us all through that, Miss Graham. Thank you.
If you're looking at the layout from left to right, then from the left-hand end, sorry, I'm just trying to find my plan.
We're actually looking at it from bottom to top because it's been put in portrait, not landscape, but that's just a difficulty of uploading these documents. That's not a fault of it. Yeah.
So if I am holding it the right way up so that the architect's details are at the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah. Yes,
so sideways on in effect.
Thank you. Yep.
Then from left to right, we have, first of all, an external area with umbrellas and different seating, all on the promenade. And then moving along, we have a double-decker bus, believe it or not, partially open top, which has been laid out such that the first or ground floor of the bus is a bar, and people are able to go upstairs to the first floor of the bus, and it's all comfy seating and tables and chairs in which to sit and enjoy, obviously, an elevated view of the beach.
Could you tell us which structure is the bus? Is it the one that looks like a washboard in the middle, or is it the one to the top with tables and chairs in?
It's the next one along. This one is.
Yeah. The next one along. It's furthest right.
This next one along, going left to right.
That's not helpful, Miss Graham. I'm sorry. Where is this double-decker bus?
If you have the plan with DMW Architects in the bottom right-hand corner, as you look at it on a landscape view, and then the bus is the second, in effect, structure drawn on the plan from the left-hand side. So from the left-hand side, we have seating, and then we have an oblong.
I see it. Yes, I see it. Yes.
And that's the bus.
Do you see that, members? Are you clear? We're looking at page 37, if that's helpful, members. I must admit, this is a terrible plan. Very disappointed. It's tiny, very difficult to see on our screens. So obviously, that's why we need you to ask questions. It would have been handy if there had been a key of some sort, but you're taking us through it, so we're content. So members, the bus is the second up from the seating plan on the left. Carry on, Miss Graham, you have the floor.
Thank you, madam. Then moving on from there, we have the next outlet. I would add that these are all containers that have been converted. So it's all bright colours, attractive. The whole air of the design is a sort of California beach type air. So bright colours, umbrellas everywhere. So the next small unit, shall I say, which says servery, is the cocktail bar. There's a special cocktail bar with like a grass roof to give the feel of Hawaiian type cocktails. Then moving on from that, there is a servery which provides food, and the food on offer is local produce in the main. No national suppliers have been incorporated into this, and rather than have, shall I say, standard beach food, the offer will be barbecued food and Pan-Asian wok food. So slightly upmarket from what is normally on offer on the beach side. And then beyond that, you will see that there is a long building running to the right-hand side. There's tables and chairs outside that, and above it, you'll see some steps up, will be on top of a container, seating for people under umbrellas to again enjoy the view of the beach. And if I can just then take you around to the dog leg coming down to the right-hand side on the server, then that is an ice cream and sundae type bar for desserts, ice cream related products. So in the main, it is all outdoor bar inside the bus at the top. And then on the other side of the promenade, an area which is decked for seating, in effect on the beach side.
So just to be clear then, that the large rectangular area with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 in tandem seating areas, that is a decking area on the beach.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
Members, are we clear? Yeah, just for the members' purposes. Just we need to thoroughly understand what the application is. Thank you.
I had hoped for some photographs, ma'am, but although these were taken by someone from the council last week, Mr. Maguire and I have not yet received them. So I do apologise, because it's not the normal sort of premises to envisage visually without perhaps a site visit. So, ma'am, the premises have now, they have been erected quite quickly and look very attractive on the beach, and clearly have proved quite popular. They've been open now for just over a week. They opened on the Saturday before last as unlicensed premises, and clearly from my vision of the premises and from what the applicants say, have proved very popular with local residents of all ages. The premises open at 8 in the morning for coffee and then run through the day to a maximum closing time of 10 p.m. Though obviously, as winters draws close and nights close in, then we suspect it may well be an earlier closing time than 10 p.m. in the winter months. From the council's perspective, these are the only refreshment facilities provided between Cafe Riva, which is on the cliff top as opposed to the beach, at Boscombe opposite the Commodore Hotel, if you're aware of it. And the next refreshment stop is actually the Hungry Hiker at Kingsbury Head. So clearly it's helpful to have some refreshment facilities on the beach during the whole of that stretch between those 2 points. Madam, at this stage, I would like to invite Nick Maguire, Contracts Officer with BCP Council, to outline what the council envisages intended from the council's perspective, as I think this will assist you with the background detail of how the operation is proposed to run during the next 2 years. And if I could ask Mr. Maguire to open his speech.
Thank you, Mr. Maguire. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone. The Solent complex that originally housed the bistro on the beach was indeed demolished back at the end of 2021. The original plan was to redevelop the site this October 2022. Due to the volatility of the construction market and the fact that we wanted to provide the best temporary offer for the residents of Southbourne and the surrounding area, it was decided to defer that rebuild until October 2023. This would give us more time to source and obtain a construction company to rebuild the site, and would also mean that we got a better quality temporary offer. If we only offered it for the 3 months of this summer, we would only get a small catering vans on the site, which we didn't feel was giving the people of Southbourne the best that we could offer them. So the decision was made to defer that for a further year. A full and vigorous tender process was undertaken, and as a result the contract was awarded to Masemaid Limited, who we felt fitted the desire of a family orientated, sort of resident orientated offer that also connected with the restaurant culture that's enjoyed by Southbourne High Street. So that's what we were aiming for when we put the tender out, and we hope that's what we've achieved. There's certainly all the feedback we've had over the last couple of months with the plans and seeing the site develop and build has been very positive.
And
Is there anything else you want to add to that?
could
Ms. Graham?
yes, could I ask a few questions of you, Mr. Maguire? Could I ask, you've visited the premises, I understand, since they've opened?
I have, yes, on a few occasions, and I've actually been very impressed with the way that it's run, and the buzz that's been generated around it. There's lots of very happy people there. Certainly what was demonstrated in the tender has been reflected in what's on site, and it does look like the pictures that were supplied in the tender process. So yes, I've certainly been very impressed with what's been delivered.
Can I just stop proceedings there? Can I
Yes.
just stop proceedings there, please? I'm rather confused, you'll forgive me, that clearly, Mr. Maguire, you are acting in a capacity of supporting the applicant. Therefore, you are not an objector, but a supporter. So you would come under other persons. So this would not be the opportunity for you to speak. I'm a little confused as to the setup between yourself and Miss Graham, because if somebody had written in and said we support this application, I'd be saying fine, you will come under our other persons and you will be able to make your representations in support, and other people would come along and make their representations in objecting. So I'm a little confused as to why you're coming in at this juncture. Obviously happy to let you speak, but actually on thought, maybe you're speaking at the wrong time. I'm going to ask Mrs. McNamara if she could advise, please. Mrs. McNamara, could you advise, please, on this point? Thank you.
Madam, could I just explain before Mrs. McNamara comes in?
Miss Graham, thank you. If I could ask, I'm asking my legal advisor to advise, please. So you don't
Very
have
well,
to.
madam.
Thank you. Mrs. McNamara, could you advise, please? Could you advise the subcommittee? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Mr. Maguire is just there to explain the contractual arrangement. That, with respect, that's not one of the licensing objectives. So it's just to aid, I think, the applicant in explaining their situation. So I think if all parties are happy for Mr. Maguire to talk now for the purposes of smoothness of running of the meeting, I don't think it makes much difference, to be honest. It's whatever aids the smooth running of the meeting, I think.
Okay, so
helps.
Thank you, Mrs. McNamara. So it's only on a factual basis then, because I was hearing more supportive comments, and the supportive comments obviously would come in as a supporter, as another person, rather than somebody who's here to advise us factually. So, Mr. Maguire, if you could keep your comments to those which are factual rather than your own opinion, and of course you can base those outcomes on fact that it is doing very well, etc., but can we keep to the facts? I'd be grateful. Thank you very much.
My apologies, ma'am.
And I'm sorry to have interrupted, but I just wanted to be clear there so that we were in the right area. So I think you had the floor, Mr. Maguire, if you want to continue.
I may have lost my train of thought. I think Miss Graham was about to ask me some questions. So,
Okay, Miss Graham,
sorry.
you have the floor. Continue with your questions on points of fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And the purpose of asking Mr. Maguire just to fill in the historical background, I think, is just so that you can see that what's proposed to be delivered is what the council intended under the tender. And perhaps, although Mr. Maguire has given his own views, I should have just asked him to confirm factually, has what has been delivered what was intended in the tender?
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Maguire.
Yes. Yes, what has been delivered was what was requested in the tender and what was indicated in the tender.
Thank you. Could I just ask you, because I think you've seen the 3 representations that have been received, which is why we're here today. Could I just ask you firstly, in terms of crime and prevention, the council have their own CCTV on the beach in addition to any at the particular premises we're concerned with today. Is that correct?
Yes, there is a council-operated CCTV camera immediately adjacent to the premises, and another one further down towards Warren's Edge. These are currently monitored between 8 AM and 8 PM by the council's in-house seafront summer planning team, based at the multi-agency control at Bournemouth Pier, and that's monitored all day for any issues.
And I think those cameras actually cover the site from the promenade's perspective. Is that correct?
They do, and they are capable of being the operator to zoom in on anything that they feel needs watching.
Thank you. And just because this was raised in one of the representations, from the provision of toilets for the facilities of obviously beach users and these premises, am I right in saying that there is a toilet block or toilet accommodation adjacent to these premises?
Yes, as part of the rebuild of the site, the council provided public conveniences. There's male and female and a disabled toilet on site.
And are there, in terms of the council's experience in providing such facilities at the beachfront, sufficient facilities there for everybody?
In normal circumstances, they would be sufficient. I think today they may struggle along with everything else.
That's only odd hot week that we have in the summer.
Yes.
And I think I'm right in saying that the rent that you are receiving from my clients in operating these premises actually funds the public conveniences that are available for anyone on the beach.
Yes.
In this location.
In that location, yes.
And could I also ask you about car parking? Now, I know car parking is not relevant from a licensing perspective, but because the representation or one of them raised car parking issues, could you just inform the committee on the availability of BCP car parking spaces in this area?
Immediately above the site is Warren's Edge car park, which has 92 car parking spaces. Just a bit further up the road at Southbourne Crossroads, there are a further 78, and there are 51 spaces on the street above.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Maguire, can I just ask, in terms of music, which was obviously proposed at the premises throughout, and indeed existed under the existing license, have you visited the premises and heard the music yourself?
I have indeed, on several occasions.
And could I just ask you, have you listened to that music from the cliff top, or is it audible from your experience in that area?
I couldn't hear it in the car park. As I was walking down the slope towards the premises, as I got much closer to the site, I could hear it. And when stood on the beach in front of it, it is audible. Certainly to the groins either side, when I walked and checked, I could barely hear it over the background noise of the beach.
Thank you, Mr. Maguire. I have no further questions unless members of the committee wish to ask you anything at this stage.
Yes, that's useful information there. Thank you, Mr. Maguire. Okay. So you have put forward your representation, and you've asked Mr. Maguire to come in to clarify some points of fact. And I will now ask if there are any questions of the applicants, and I will start with members. Mrs. McNamara, you have your hand up. Did you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the position. The application says the sale of alcohol till 2200 hours, but in the email, Miss Graham.
Cover that. I was going to cover that. It says 20, doesn't it?
21:30.
That's a question we'll raise. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mrs. McNamara. It's kind of you. So with that prompt in mind and going back to questions from our members, I'll start with Councillor Farquhar. Do you have any questions for the applicant at this moment? Thank you.
I do, Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Graham. Yeah, and just coming back to the licensing objectives. Chair, I took the opportunity while the presentation was going on, because I agree with you. I find it very difficult to picture this without any photographs of the actual site as it exists just now. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I was a patron of the previous premises. I was concerned that Ms. Graham said that it's built on the promenade. So my first question is the premises that you outline, e.g. the containers, the bus, are they actually on the site of the old bistro rather than on the promenade? And for the promenade itself, how are your patrons separated from the promenade? Because there are service vehicles, there are emergency vehicles, etc. There are bicycles, etc. How are your patrons actually separated from the actual prom if they're crossing from the area that has the containers and the bus to the decking area that's on the beach, please?
Thank you. Thank you, to remind members as to the previous structure and the differentiation, if any, between this pop-up area. I think that would be useful. Thank you, Ms. Graham. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. I would add that I haven't finished my presentation, in that Mr. Richard Slater is going to infill details subsequently. But in terms of the question that's been asked, the premises are on the site of the original bistro on the beach. They are separated from the promenade by a rather heavy structural fence, and by fence it is like close boarded fence on two sides, so it's probably about 6 inches thick in terms of the fence, close boarded all the way along between the bistro and the beach site and the promenade, with disabled ramps running up inside the premise or inside the wood structure of the fencing to access the site. But I think Mr. Richard Slater would like just to come in at this stage before he gives his full details of evidence, just to explain that point further, if I may.
Just to help on this
one moment, please, Mr. Slater. My apologies, Ms. Graham. I thought you had completed your presentation. So we'll take that point in case. Councillor Farquhar, thank you for your question. We'll actually return back to you, Ms. Graham, so that you can complete your presentation. I'm very sorry, I did believe you had finished it. So if Mr. Slater would like to come in now and make his contribution, and then you complete your presentation, and we'll go back to members' questions. Thank you, Mr. Slater. I
apologise, Ma'am. I should have said Mr. Maguire was just giving the introduction to the matter. So Mr. Richard Slater, who I have with me, is the general manager. He has been on site during the build, and he has been on site since it opened. He's overseen the whole operation there. And if I could ask him, first of all, to just describe the type of clientele that you've experienced since the opening, and what is into targeting clientele.
Thank you. We were obviously very very interested when this site was coming available. We currently operate 2 sites in Christchurch, the Boathouse and the Beach House. Kim Slater, the director, has been a businessman in the local area for some 40 years now as a licensee. So we are, as a company, very much part of the local area. We are a local family business, although even myself are not related, as pointed out. I have worked for Kim for on and off over 20 years myself now. We have built a good reputation in the local area with our other sites, and we really saw the opportunity with this site to do more of the same of what we currently do well. That is to provide a premium quality food and drink offering to the local population. The types of clientele we've received so far, mixed. It's exactly the same with our other sites. I've always said we target everyone from 18 to 80. We're targeting family groups and we're targeting local residents. We did not apply for any of the other tenders that were closer to Bournemouth on the basis that they are much more tourist hotspots, catering to visitors to the area. We're much more concerned with enhancing our reputation locally and drawing a local crowd down to this site rather than just targeting the hit-and-run tourists, as I call them.
And you're proposing to open, or you are already open from 8 o'clock in the morning. Has that been popular with coffee and breakfast?
One of the grumbles within the local community was that the bistro on the beach was knocked down back in November, and there were no provisions in this area for quite some time. The award of the tender was given to us in May, and so it's been a very quick turnaround for us to get something open as humanly possible on site. And we have found that the reaction of the local residents has been phenomenal. They have all been keenly awaiting something to reopen on the site. And yes, opening at 8 AM for coffee, we get all beach users take their morning exercise or their route to work or walking the dogs, especially in this heat before the sun comes up. And everyone is extremely grateful that they can get a cup of coffee in one of their favourite locations again, and that the quality of the coffee is, I shall say, considerably better than it used to be.
Thank you. And could you just elaborate on the food on offer and the types of drinks that you will have for sale?
So with the food side of things, we've created a big kitchen on site using shipping containers. And for the sake of creating the pop-up atmosphere on site, we've labelled these as almost as 2 separate entities. So we have the Ingo Grill, which does a series of barbecue foods. And we have the Wok Shack, which specialises in Pan-Asian cuisine. We're using the local butchers, Neil and Sons in Tuckton, to supply all our meats. We have sushi from another local supplier, which is again a small family business that provides for us. The vast majority of all the food we get is from another couple of local companies, Chef's Mate and Ital Import. We are very keen that we are engaging the same elements and the same suppliers that we use at our other sites. As I said before, we are very much a part of the local community, and we support local businesses and they support us. So the food is aiming at a premium quality but beachfront speed offering. It's not sat down dining such as we provide at the Boathouse in Christchurch, but more similar to what we offer down at the Beach House at Muddyford, where it's about making sure that people really good quality food, but without
Mr. Slater, I think we have the gist of this. That it's high-end food in a very nice environment. So, and I think your credentials and your background is quite clear with regard to your professional approach. So I think we can put that one to bed. I think we've understood that. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Ms. Graham, are there any further questions for you? You're asking questions of Mr. Slater.
Indeed.
Can I just intent to accept that? Carry on.
Thank you, Mum. In fact, just to add for amusement, we have a local supplier of doggy donuts, which go down very well with the dog walkers on the beach. Just if I can just touch on the alcohol side of things, because obviously that has some impact on crime and the prevention thereof. The alcohol that you're proposing to sell, what sort of price ranges are it? Are you going to supply beer to?
Again, we're a premium venue, and we've always used pricing over the years to ensure that we don't attract the certain type of clientele that are more likely to cause issues. So that we see the alcohol as being ancillary to the food offering, and that the food is really the centre of what we're doing. However, obviously in a beachfront location like this, when people are relaxing, they are looking to enjoy a premium quality glass of, say, Côte de Provence rosé alongside their meal. We're serving champagne, prosecco, premium quality cocktails, and again premium beers. We're not looking to do any drinks offers as such to attract that sort of crowd down. And the idea is that it's a laid back approach to the alcohol provision for people that are just looking to accentuate their experience with us.
And I think you commented to me that from your experience of running this type of premises, that youngsters are more likely to get their alcohol from an off license and carry it down onto the beach rather than pay your premium prices.
We certainly we are, whilst we are there giving an offering for this part of the beach, there are plenty of beach users that are already existing there that don't necessarily use ourselves, especially during this heat wave. We've seen quite large crowds flocking to the area, and many of them you see coming down the slope with their cool boxes in tow, bringing their own alcohol down with them. Obviously, whilst we can't patrol the public area that is the beach, simply by us being there, having a presence, I would like to think that we actually increase the security of the area, which was during the building process being used by rather large groups drinking the beach part.
And can I just ask you, from your perspective, you've got CCTV on the premises yourself?
We did. We obviously agreed with the police that CCTV would be part of the licensing restrictions, and we have already installed that from the start of operation. It was something we would have installed regardless. And yes, we have a number of cameras on site focused on the different areas, so it would be very difficult to be on our site without being clearly videoed.
And I think you are in liaison with the council on the council's operators of their CCTV, so that you can contact each other if needs be.
That's it. We've been in constant contact with the seafront team through this whole process, and now we're getting used to the working operations side of being down on the seafront with them. Me and Nick in conversations probably more often than either of us would like at this stage, as well as the lifeguards that are positioned right out the front of us, the cleaners that come up and down the beach, and various other council operatives that we're working as part of a team to make sure that this part of the beach is as looked after as it could be. For a brief anecdote, if I may, the other night the beach cleaners came down at about 9 p.m. and some beach users had actually had their own barbecue on the beach and deposited it in one of the bins. So the bin was there for smoking, and we were able to provide copious amounts of water ourselves, because we were on site, to actually help put this bin out alongside the council's own cleaners.
Thank you. If I can just turn now to the other complaint. One of the representations dealt solely with concerns for music. The music that you're playing on site, you've directioned the speakers in specific areas, is that correct?
Yes, we've used, again, a local company, CPS, who are based in Christchurch, who are probably one of the biggest providers nationally for concert production, and they have fitted a sound system on our site that is carefully aimed so that the music does not go to the rear of the site, i.e. up the cliff where the local residents are accommodated, but everything is aimed to project forward from the site and again reduce any spread of noise to the left or right of the site as much as possible to contain it. And we've used a larger number of smaller speakers to make sure that we've got a balance of sound throughout the site, rather than we know some other locations rely more on a single large PA system which can project sound further, but it requires a greater volume to do so. So we're able to create a good, well-balanced musical atmosphere without it escaping too far in any direction.
And your premises are situated at the bottom of a cliff top, is that correct?
They are indeed. I've been up and down that cliff several times in the past few weeks.
And the premises are not visible from the cliff top?
They are not visible from the cliff top. You would have to be in the car park and leaning over the fence before we're visible in any way.
And from a noise perspective, if you walk up the slope to the car park behind your premises, at what point do you hear the music noise?
I've been approaching the site from every single direction over the past couple of weeks. So if you come down the slope from the car park, you literally have to come adjacent to the premises before you hear any noise. Again, as you walk up from either side on the promenade, we've had the local beach hut residents in occupation over the past weeks, taking advantage of the weather, and I've been speaking to them, and again they have reported that to the left of the premises, the first beach hut could not hear anything on the day that I went and spoke to them, and again to the right, the people there have said that there is no noise coming through beyond the background noise, which is quieter than the background noise of the beach itself.
And I think actually you've discussed and agreed conditions with the environmental health officer, and he has indicated his satisfaction.
Yes, not only have we agreed the conditions with the EHO, but the EHO actually came down last week whilst we were in operation to have a look at the site, to hear the sound volume, and he was extremely happy with the way everything was and reported that he had no concerns and that he was happy for me to report that to yourselves today as well.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. And then just touching on the conditions that you've agreed with the police, which I think will answer one of the councillors' questions. We originally submitted the application for a 10 a.m. cessation of sales of alcohol. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the tender process was for an operation that would finish at 10 p.m. This suited us well because we are not looking to create a late night location down on this site. This is much more of a daytime operation. And obviously in the summer months, 10 o'clock is about when the sun starts going down. So we're just looking to capture that sunset. These are shorter hours than the previous premises license. But when making the application, we decided that we should stick with the hours that we were intending on operating rather than keeping the historic hours.
And subsequent to that, the police asked that you have half an hour's, in effect, drinking up time, although obviously under the new Licensing Act, there is no drinking up time. So on that basis, you agreed to not sell alcohol beyond 9:30 p.m.
That's it. So yeah, the police wanted that half hour within the 10 p.m. limit, and we were happy to accommodate that request on their part. So the bars will stop serving at 9:30 to give everybody half an hour, so that everybody has left the premises by 10 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. I have no further questions, madam, but I'm sure your fellow committee members may well wish to ask any operative questions of Mr. Slater.
Would it help if I answered Mr. Farquhar's last question at this point?
If you could just hold a moment. It wasn't an opportunity for questions with respect, Ms. Graham. It was your opportunity to put forward your presentation. but you chose to question your client, which is a different way of doing things. It's rather left the subcommittee bereft of its remit. But I'm sure that it was in an effort to be associative. So we're grateful. So if we just get back then to our process. Our process is now that I believe that the applicant has now finished their representation. Is that correct, Ms. Graham?
Indeed, ma'am. Mr. Kim Slater, the director, is present with us, as you've seen.
I know say to Kim Slater, thank you, Ms. Graham, that unless there is anything new that he has to add, because obviously we don't want to repeat ourselves, then I will go on to the next stage. But if you have anything new to add, Mr. Kim Slater, please do so now. You have the floor. Thank you.
No, I'm quite happy with everything Richard said. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Slater, Mr. Kim Slater. Okay, so just to be clear, Ms. Graham has finished her submission, although it did have a lot of questions in there, which is an odd remit, but one I'm sure which was meant to be associative. And so now we move on to members. I believe that Councillor Farquhar, you asked a question with regard to the use of the prom for the premise, and we were advised that this was over the structure in a similar site previously to, and that it was in fact segregated by a large heavy duty board for safety, etc., which I know was a concern of yours. We've had the question answered with regard to closing times, which is for alcohol sale, which is to be 21:30, and in order to clear the site, because there was some discrepancy or some confusion there as to timings. So, Councillor Farquhar, did you have another question? I think that a lot of questions were covered by the long submission of Miss Graham and Mr. Slater. But if you have any further questions, I would happily hear them. Thank you.
I do, Chair. I have 3 further questions and 1 for clarification, and I agree with you. It's a somewhat unusual, or unwelcomed departure from the usual process. So I'll try to work around what I heard in the question and answer session, going back and forth. So the first question which I've got, yeah, we'll come back to that. So the first question I've got, it was relating to the CCTV, and I was glad that the CCTV came out, but under the conditions, you said you have numerous cameras around the location, and they're covering all areas whereby the alcohol would be served or moved around, including does that include the area which is on the beach itself?
So the alcohol sales will be from the bus and the tiki bar on site. Obviously, we have as part of this the takeaway license, so people can mix and sit on the beach with them, but we will not be putting an outlet serving alcohol on the beachfront itself.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to that then, what sort of demarcation is there around the seating area, which is actually on the beach itself? I take it that this is some sort of decking or some sort of temporary hard surface actually on the beach?
Yeah, at this stage in the process, we literally have benches on the sand adjacent to the prom. The intention is that we are creating a decking board that will run around these benches, and then we will use a roped fencing around the sides of this area, again, to restrict access in and out of it from certain points. Although it will be very much an open area, we're not looking to create a large structure on the beach as such that would interrupt the views or the public use of the area. I believe the old bistro used to have a number of benches along the prom itself, and I believe that the intention with the council's tender on this one was to move those off the prom onto the beach to ensure that traffic could move through more freely on the prom, and again, pedestrians aren't hindered by any crowd on the prom itself.
If I may, Chair, my understanding of that then is that it is not the area which is on the beach is the benches are actually on the sand. There will be decking put down to allow people that have accessibility needs, no doubt, to reach the beaches. But my question was, is that area which is demarcated covered by CCTV? And if not, is your intention then that it would be an off sale which then passes over the promenade, and then your patrons would be using that demarcation area? Is that correct?
Yeah, there is CCTV covering it, both from the council CCTV and our own CCTV. We have full visual of that area on the beach, so it's fully monitored from all angles. And the intention is that, patrons will be able to purchase alcohol and carry it over to that site. But it's also a public use area, and we're not restricting it to patrons only. We're allowing families to use those benches as they would on the beach.
Thank you.
If I may, Chair, I think
we've exhausted. Councillor Parker, with respect, I think we've exhausted this. I think your question was, you were very concerned that there's, and quite rightly so, that there's coverage for CCTV in those specific areas, and with that public sort of thoroughfare there, that there would be no issues. There weren't when there was a full structure, so I think we can be confident that with the CCTV, both that provided by the applicant and that which is provided by BCP, they would be well covered. So I think that point's well made. And could you move on to your next question, Councillor Parker? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It relates to the toilet block. I heard that there was some provision from the applicant to funding the toilet block. My concern and my question relates to what times is that toilet block opened and closed? Because essentially we have a licensed premises here, and to my understanding that the council toilet blocks, or public conveniences, have a different closing time depending on where they are in the conurbation. So my question is, what times is that toilet block, which in theory your patrons will be using, opening and closing?
If I give a brief answer, and then it may be prudent for Nick Maguire to jump in afterwards. The toilet block is provided, facilities provided by the council. We do not provide direct funding for the toilet block, but it's from the council's perspective, the rent that we are paying on the site is being utilised to help cover the costs of that toilet block. And whilst the toilet block itself is operated and run and maintained by the council, as all the public seafront toilets are, we do also have a set of keys for the toilet block. So in any instance where it was closed earlier by council maintenance, we would then be in charge of operating it ourselves after hours to ensure that they were available the full time that we were open.
I know the answer to this question. It's supposed to be that toilets are contemporaneously being kept open to provide for local businesses, etc., such as this. This is a much better way of working this. Now, the specific time I'm not certain of, but I believe it's around 9 o'clock. But if you are more certain, then please advise us.
I believe at the moment, with the weather and the summer holidays, we will be closing the toilets at 10 o'clock along the seafront and opening them again at 7, possibly even earlier in the mornings.
Thank you. That's excellent. That answers Councillor Farquhar's question. A question well made, Mr. Farquhar. Councillor Farquhar, I beg your pardon. And a point of confirmation you had, Councillor Farquhar?
Yes, I heard the presentation as regards the efforts to ensure that the recorded music was within the confines. Could I just ask, because environmental health was mentioned, have environmental health actually recorded the decibel level of your operations as they exist just now, and does that fall within the conditions of the license which we've seen?
Well, I can answer that for you. I mean, no, that wouldn't be something that would be done. There's a set parameter of things which need to happen, and the noise needs not to be above, I think it was 10 of the ambient background noise. So it wouldn't be a pre-test, so to speak. It needs to fall within that remit.
If I may, Chair, then Mr. Slater indicated that he was passing on information from Environmental Health that they were happy. I just wanted to understand in what way that they were happy with the noise levels as they exist at the moment.
Oh, I understand. Yes, they'd be happy in the fact that they agreed apropos to conditions which have been placed. And that condition is the condition 2: live and recorded music from the outdoor bar / dining area shall not exceed the background noise level by more than 10 dB brackets A. I'm not technical, I don't really know what that means, but I believe that's a noise level over a 15-minute period. So that is where Environmental Health were so content. Thank you for that confirmation, Councillor Farquhar. Councillor Williams, do you have any questions?
I do, thank you. I was quite perturbed, I think, at the drawing you provided. But Mrs. Graham, once you described it, it did become clearer. It seems to me that, and I'm looking at it now, that the premises seem to be more about drinking than eating, whereas the previous premises was the other way around. Or am I misreading the plans?
Ms. Graham, if you'd like to answer that, please, or if you'd like your client to
I'm not
answer.
suggesting that there is no food because you've been through a menu, but there's more seating around the drinking areas than there seems to be food.
So you'd like some clarification and confirmation and perhaps some assurances just that it's a quid pro quo. Thank you very much. Ms. Graham, would you like to answer, or your client?
Yes, indeed, Councillor Williams. Thank you for the opportunity, and I accept. I think this is one of the few licence applications I've dealt with where I wish you could have a site visit, because everything would become clear if you could
Some
see.
photographs would have been handy.
They wouldn't. And I was anticipating photographs for which I apologise that they're not to hand. But the whole area, and I have visited myself the operation, the whole area is seating where people take their food and their drink. There's no division between the tables and chairs where people, compared with the tables and chairs where they would eat, in that there is in fact, the largest servery is the food servery, and people would buy the food over that servery and then just take it with their drinks to wherever they wish to be seated to eat. From my client's perspective, they are a major food operator at their other premises. Considerable amount of the profit is from food. So I would assure you, and I'm sure Mr. Richard Slater would agree with me, that food will certainly be on offer to a large extent throughout the whole of the operating hours.
I think the way it was described, the cocktail areas and Hawaiian this, and it was more emphasis on the booze than it was the food, but perhaps that was just selling it to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence, for clarifying that. It's extremely useful. It's good to know that there is a good balance. We need to clarify that. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Williams?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't have any further questions because most questions were covered between client and applicant. So I'll just now go, we don't have any objectors. I think that the issues that we need to cover with regard to our objectors, were they here, they would be asking, what about noise pollution? Well, we've heard about noise pollution. I've just quoted the condition which is going to be applied. We hope to obfuscate that. We have alcohol sales. We can't make a comment with regard to economic issues around other businesses and what profits they might have made with regard to that point. It says it's a family beach. It's actually a public beach with the deepest of respect. I'm extremely pleased that the locals feel it's a family beach. That is lovely. But obviously it's not just for the people who live in the vicinity. It is for everybody to use. Parking, we touched on that, and we were given assurances very kindly by Mr. Maguire with regard to some considerable amount of parking, some at Warren's Edge, some at Southbourne. I didn't quite hear the reference, and 51 on the street. So I think there is something, I'm going to quickly count this, well over 200, which would seem a suitable provision for parking. Not that it's a matter for us, but it was touched on by the objectors. We spoke about, they've also put public conveniences. We've heard in detail about the public conveniences, even how they're to be funded, and indeed the times at which they'll be opened, which seems very assuring that they'll be open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., which covers the hours of opening for the premise. Crowd control, odd phrase, but I think the crowd control would come within the CCTV provision. So if there were any issues or anomalies, they could be quickly dealt with because they could be seen by the general CCTV television, which is available for BCP, and also by the local CCTV the applicant would hold. So I hope I've covered all those questions of, if were the objectors so to be here, of the applicant. So that said, I'll move on then to questions of the applicant by our officer. Mrs. Jardim, do you have any questions? You're having trouble unmuting. Shake your head. Do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you. I think my computer's melting. That's why it's not moving, not doing anything. Sorry.
It must be the heat. It must be the heat. Okay, then. So the next process would be the responsible authorities or other persons who would be our objectors who'd make their representations. I'm very much hoping that for the purposes of this subcommittee that those representations have been covered both by the applicant in her questioning of her client and also in my précis that I've just given with regard to overcoming their objections. So I think safe that they're not here. There's not a lot more we can do unless our legal advisor would like to think there's anything that I could ask or raise. Mrs. McNamara, do you have anything that you might, any advice you might need to give, or do you feel it's well covered?
Chair, it's been covered. As you say, you just need to be clear that it's the licensing objectives that are relevant today. But
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So then we have nobody who can ask any questions of the other persons because they're not present. So it's now an opportunity for all parties who are present to sum up. And as we have no other persons, we will go to the applicant. So we'll ask Miss Graham if she'd like to sum up on behalf of her client. Miss Graham, you have the floor. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you, ma'am, and thank you for the opportunity to expand on this operation this morning. I must admit that I did take it on a slightly different slant through questioning on this particular application because I felt it was much better that you understood from both the council's perspective and the operator's perspective where they were coming together under the tender to hopefully offer these facilities for the general public throughout the next 2 years. Obviously, the premises are designed for the summer season, and particularly much of the area is hence outdoors. My clients have already actually lost much of the good weather due to the shortness of time between the tender being confirmed and the need to erect the premises ready for operation. And I'm hoping that you will accept that my clients have fulfilled the vision that BCP Council was looking for under this tender for an outdoor pop-up area. The representations have obviously resulted in a slight delays to the opening with loss of trade and hence economic consequences. But from the customer's perspective, then you have had the opportunity, and my clients have had the opportunity to see how the premises operate before the license is actually issued. And from all sides, it appears that it's clearly going to be very successful and is very popular already with visitors to the area, whether they be residents, tourists, families, or whoever.
Thank you very much, Ms. Graham. I'm sorry, you finished. You paused.
No.
I think we have the gist of what you're wanting us to understand. Unless there's anything further.
Without wishing to prolong matters, I hope you will accept that the mediation, both with the police and the environmental health, has sensibly led to string of conditions which in effect should assure you of any concerns that were voiced with regard to the licensing objectives. My client could really have used the Live Music Act to operate music at the premises without any regulations, but I think they've shown actually their concern and responsibility by applying for a new license with correct conditions, which obviously proves that they're responsible enough to want to control the premises and have controls in the area, which otherwise would not be the case. And of course, as you quite rightly said, Madam, the beach is there forever. It's a public space, and there's nothing to stop people bringing alcohol and music themselves to the beach, which is obviously experienced day in, day out in good weather. And the sheer presence of these premises there, I would hope, will add to some form of control in the area, because there are eyes and ears and CCTV that is checking on what's going on in the area, apart from all the beach users being present. I hope, therefore, that you will consider that we have done all we can in both fulfilling the tender requirements of the council and also ensuring that from a responsible position that the conditions on the premises licence as put forward will adequately lead to the controls and the good running of these premises during the next couple of years. And I'd ask you therefore, Madam, to grant this application in the terms as requested.
Thank you very much, Ms Graham. Mrs Jardim, do you have any summing up that you'd like to provide?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, thank you very much to all parties. So item 10, I will now conclude the hearing, and at the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with our legal advisor and our clerk, and we'll deliberate. And notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today. So 5 days from today. And the notification of decision will include information about right of appeal as appropriate. And could our legal advisor, Mrs McNamara, please kindly advise us with regard to the right of appeal? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There would be a right of appeal against any decision made by the subcommittee, and that appeal period starts 21 days from notification in writing, and it's an appeal to the Magistrates' Court.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everybody, to the Mr. Slaters and Miss Graham, and to you, Mr. Maguire, for your attendance, and to all officers and parties. We will now take a short adjournment. We will ask all those parties who are here to leave. We will be commencing again in at 25 to 12. Okay, so we will now take a short adjournment and we will ask the live stream to finish. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And welcome back to the Licensing Subcommittee, today 19th of July 2022. And we move on to item 6 of the substantive, which is an application from Bread and Butcher, 941 Christchurch Road, Bournemouth. And an application has been received for a new premises licence for the premises known as Bread and Butcher, 491 Christchurch Road, Bournemouth. This matter is brought before the Licence Subcommittee for determination. So I'm going to ask each participant to introduce themselves and to state their role. And I'll start with myself. My name is Councillor Judes Butt. I'm Chair of the Licensing Committee and chair this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Farquhar.
Councillor George Farquhar. I'm a panel member today, and my ward that I represent is Boscombe East and Puxdown.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. And Councillor Williams.
Hello, I'm Councillor Lawrence Williams, member of this licensing committee and subcommittee, and my ward is Littledown and Iford.
Thank you very much. And a thank you, public thank you to our 2 reserve members who've stayed the distance with us until now. They've managed to escape. We need reserve members just in case either of subcommittee members becomes incommoded and has to leave. So many thanks to Councillor David Kelsey and Councillor Dwayne Farr for standing in as reserves today. Extremely grateful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in the sun. Moving on then, Sarah Rogers.
Hello, good morning. Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer for BCP Council.
Thank you, Sarah. And if you could put your video on, that'd be lovely so we can see you. Thank you. And Mr. John Payne.
Yes, good morning. John Payne from LSL Licensing Lawyers, representing the applicant in this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. And Mr. Bondira.
Good morning. I am the owner of the bread and butcher shop. We have been trading since the October last year, and the basic shop tells us pretty much what we do. What it doesn't tell us is that we are specializing in a high quality product.
Mr. Bondira, I recognise your enthusiasm. It was just to introduce your good self. We can hear all about your application in a minute. Okay, just to say that you are who you are. You've got a name written and I can see your name just to say that you are who you are. That's lovely. And you're very welcome this morning. Thank you. Is our objector with us, Mr. Riza Bulbul, yet? No? Okay. We do have one objector, Mr. Riza Bulbul, and if the gentleman does surface, then we'll let him in straight away. And I know that our clerk, Miss Hollyoak, is looking after that. Thank you, Miss Hollyoak. Mrs. McNamara.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Joanne McNamara. I'm team leader in the litigation team at BCP Council, and I'm legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Hollyoak.
Hello, Jill Hollyoak, clerk to the subcommittee today.
Thank you very much. Okay, so before I run through procedure, I'll just check that everyone who's given notice of intention to speak has been identified, and I believe they have, and anybody who wishes to withdraw any representation does so now, or shows their hand if they so wish. Okay, thank you, you are content. So I'll take that as correct. So I'll quickly go through the proposed procedure for the meeting, which is fairly simple for the order of speaking. So the licensing officer will present a report. The applicant will then make an application. There'll be questions of the applicant by all parties, and the members of the subcommittee will go first. We do have other persons here, objector. We have Mr. Bulbul. He's not with us, but if he is so with us, he will then make his representation. And then there'll be questions of the other persons who is our objector today by members, who will go first, and all other parties. And then all parties will be given an opportunity to sum up with the party who spoke last to go first. And the hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. A notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that is today. And notification of the decision will include information about the right to appeal as appropriate. So with that said, I'll just ask that all parties confirm that they're happy with that proposed procedure. And if you're not, please do tell me. So, Mr. Mondira, are you so content?
Yes, I am. Yes,
You
yes.
are? Thank you. And Mr. Payne?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. We still don't have Mr. Bulbul. Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. And Mrs. McNamara?
Thank you, Chair. That's fine.
Thank you, Mrs. McNamara. So finally, may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they already have given in writing, but to expand on their written representations, and all questions to be asked through the chairman, and there'll be no cross-examination of parties. So please, Mr. Payne, not asking your applicant questions. Okay, the questions come through the panel. Thank you very much. So all that said, I will now ask if our licensing officer would kindly present a report. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you very much. So an application has been made by joint individuals for a licence to permit off sales of alcohol and delivery between the hours of 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. Tuesday to Friday, and 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. on Saturdays. The premises wish to provide off sales from their retail shop and use a section of the premises to provide alcohol for delivery, operated by 3V Vino Limited. As a result of the consultation, 7 representations were received, consisting of 2 handwritten letters and 5 standard letters, under the grounds that to grant the application would undermine the licensing objectives. Dorset Police and Trading Standards have agreed a number of additional conditions to be imposed, and they will be on the licence should it be granted. Details of the conditions agreed are attached to Appendix 3. However, since publication of my report, the applicants have instructed Mr. Payne, who has produced a consolidated version of conditions which has been circulated to assist. These also include proposed conditions to deal with the concerns raised in the representations. No representations were received from any of the responsible authorities. Should this application be granted and the applicant fails to operate in accordance with the licence, or conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any responsible authority or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. So do we have any questions of Mrs. Rogers with regard to points of fact, members? Councillor Williams.
Not at this stage, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Farquhar?
None, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Payne, do you have any questions on points of fact with regard to the executive report?
No, I'm grateful to Mrs. Rogers. That's absolutely fine. Thank you. That's covered everything.
Thank you very much indeed. We don't have Mr. Bulbill with us, so unfortunately I can't ask him. Okay, your opportunity now, Mr. Payne, to put forward your application. You have the floor. And just to say that the subcommittee is so content to accept your consolidated proposed conditions as you sent them to us together with the pictures. So thank you for that large piece of homework. It's certainly very helpful. Mr. Payne, you have the floor. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm very grateful. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do is spend my time split between myself and Mr. Bondera. Mr. Bondera, perhaps having had might like to commence by explaining a little bit about what this premises is, and also his experience in the retail trade. So, Mr. Bondera, perhaps if I can hand over to you just to do that before I then take matters forward.
Okay, Mr. Bondera, opportunity to tell us all about your business. Thank you. You have the floor, Mr. Bondera.
Thank you very much. I'm the owner of the Bread and Butcher, and we've been trading since October last year. As the name of a business pretty much tells us what we're doing, then it doesn't really tell us that we are specializing in the selling of a high quality product. So basically the business profile is to target a high end of the market, offering the premium sales, premium products. Now, as a part of upbringing our business, we would like to extend our range with an alcoholic beverage. And again, idea is to sell the premium alcohols, which would accompany nicely with your steak meals, etc., the products you can buy in our shop. Prior to opening this shop, our business, I worked as a deputy manager for Lidl company for 2.5 years, which gave me a necessary retail experience. And also before that, for 12 years, I was working as a manager for Wetherspoon's chain, which gave me a vast experience in the field of selling alcohols. Also during this period, I held the designated premises supervisor position twice for the pubs in Wetherspoons, and I am being a personal license holder for nearly 10 years now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bondera. And Mr. Payne, you have the floor back. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm glad that the consolidated proposed conditions was helpful. And hopefully Mr. Bondera's explanation of the type of premises is also helpful. As you've heard, this is a shop selling meats and bread. That is the primary purpose of the premises. It is no more awful. No, it's not awful at all. It's actually a high quality premises. Now, had this been a premises that was just selling alcohol, my approach would have been different. But this is a butcher's shop and bread shop open till 6 p.m. in the evening. And we are aware of the representations that have been made and the concerns that have been expressed by residents. And I can entirely understand why some residents are concerned about sale of alcohol. Had this been an off licence, then I would have more of an issue with it. However, what we have done, as you will have seen, is we've listened to the representations that have been made, and we've offered a number of additional conditions.
Okay, Mr. Payne, if you'd, sorry to interrupt you, I know you're in full flow, I'm sure you're going to, but if you'd like to take us through those conditions which are apropos to perhaps overcoming those objections and keeping within the issues you put forward, I'll be grateful.
That was indeed going to be my next point. So on the consolidated conditions that we've provided you with, there are at the beginning a number of conditions. I think it's 3 conditions. In fact, there's 4 because it's interspersed with condition 4. So the first one is that the premises shall not be operated for the primary purposes of the sale of alcohol to customers attending those premises. So that would prohibit this being a mainstream off licence. It is and it will remain as a retail outlet selling other things. The sale of alcohol under this proposal can only be ancillary, cannot turn into any sort of normally licensed bar, pub, or off licence of a mainstream nature. So that's the first point, and I think that goes to the suggestion that I think the word used was there is an attraction of vagrants to premises that sell alcohol for off licence purposes. That is probably more appropriate to a mainstream off licence than a retail premises selling bread and meats. The second condition is that all sales of alcohol be made in sealed containers that prevent any consumption on the premises or immediately outside. And the third condition, which is echoing was what Mr. Bondera said to start off with, that alcoholic beverages sold to customers at the premises shall primarily be of a type that is regarded as a premium or specialist nature. And that's really to keep the sales of alcohol in keeping with the type of premises that it is. This is not going to be a premises that is going to be selling cut price booze, to use that phrase, or trying to compete with supermarket prices. It is providing something that complements the main thrust of this particular business. And the other condition that we have offered, which goes to the heart, I think, of what is being suggested by those that have made representations, is number 5 on the list, is that no alcohol or no sale of alcohol should be made to any person who might reasonably be expected to consume it in a public area in the vicinity of the premises in a way that might cause or give rise to antisocial behaviour or crime. So if there is somebody who comes into the premises, I'm sure you will appreciate that the type of customer that will enter the premises is not the type of customer that one would normally associate with, let's use the phrase, street drinking. They'll be quite readily identifiable. The customers will be assessed before they are sold the alcohol. And that's perhaps a useful condition to have on off licenses generally. And it's certainly something that I've used in off licenses elsewhere in applications throughout the country. And that's a positive contribution to promoting the licensing objectives. So that is what we have proposed. The other conditions really reflect what has been agreed with the police and with trading standards. And we're very grateful for the police and trading standards to have that discussion and to come up with a set of conditions which hopefully will again be seen as promoting the licensing objectives and help this business to trade successfully. So that is the package that you have before you. We hope that with the support of the police and trading standards, you will see that that is a positive thing. We've actually gone a little further. You will possibly appreciate, because in the pack there's reference to training certificates. I don't know if Mrs. Rogers has actually circulated those. I know they arrived rather late yesterday, but the staff at the premises have now completed what's sometimes known as SWERCOTS, or the POENS training. You'll of course be entirely familiar with that. It's a package that is prepared by trading standards authorities and recognised as a means of training and qualification for those who are selling age-restricted goods. So everybody, you will see, has passed that test with over 90%, which is a good result. And so you can see that we have gone even further than has been required by the responsible authorities in all of this. So what we say is that hopefully you will agree with us that the pack we put together is more than sufficient to overcome the objections. And no doubt, if there are any issues that arise, then the residents of the area will be more than welcome to come and speak to Mr. Bondira to explain their concerns, and he will take, I have no doubt, strong action to correct anything. But given the type of premises that this is, we suggest that those problems just simply won't arise because of the nature and because of the package. Chair, unless I can help you any further, I think that probably summarises everything you need to hear from me. You've got photographs. I hope those are useful. They certainly characterise the premises and if nothing else, show you the limited space that there is available for display of alcohol. It's quite limited. The shelves are taken up with pots of, I'm not quite sure what they are. Perhaps Mr. Bondera can explain. I would imagine that they are sauces and what have you that are shown on the photographs. There is going to be no major display of alcohol. That's not shown on the photographs.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Bain. Indeed, the photographs are extremely useful. It does give us a good overall view of what's what and where's where, and especially with regard to the limited space for alcohol, showing that it's not going to be a wall-to-wall alcohol fest per se. So, members, now opportunity for you to raise any questions. So I will ask first, Councillor Lawrence Williams. Thank you. If you have any, indeed, Mr.
No, I was going to say I don't have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got two. The first one is, has the applicant have any direct experience of personal deliveries? I have a concern as regards the conditions that there's a notebook or some means which is carried around to check the age and challenge 25 on the delivery. So if I may, Chair, I'd like to ask that question, and I very much appreciate the applicant actually pointing out his experience in retail and in the sale of alcohol, and the fact that he's been a DPS twice. But I wanted to ask a question as regards buttoning the nature of personal delivery sales, which is mentioned in the application.
Okay, thank you. I believe the personal delivery sales are by third party, but will be advised. Thank you. So, Mr. Payne, would you like to respond on behalf of your client, or would you prefer your client respond?
Yes, I was hit on an interesting and very topical point, and that is the question of deliveries of alcohol, because of course the law is not very well phrased at the moment, and there are indeed projects going on at the moment looking at alcohol sales and home delivery. I think Mr. Bondira has not had a significant, would I be correct, Mr. Bondira is nodding his head, experience of selling alcohol and having it delivered to people's homes. But what we say is that we have put into place this requirement for the book to make sure that there is a provision to ensure that underage people are not served at home. So there is a very clear briefing to staff and to delivery, or there would be to delivery people who are engaged to make sure that they do not sell to or do not deliver to people at home. Now, I'm conscious that in this country we do need to grasp this particular nettle because it is entirely possible for anybody outside the country, for instance, to get one of the mainstream couriers just to deliver alcohol to somebody's house. And there is no checking of that required. But we've gone further than that. We've gone further than the requirements by offering those conditions that you see in the application. So we are confident that alcohol will not be supplied to those who are underage.
Okay, thank you. That's sort of second check and balance in place. I hope that assures you, Councillor Farquhar, and a very good question. And
absolutely. Well, if I just do a little follow up to that one, with the proposed conditions whereby the primary nature of the business is not the sale of alcohol, with the home deliveries or the ordering for delivery at home, how will that actually function? If somebody says, I want a fine bottle of wine, but I don't want a cut of meat or bread, how does that actually, what mechanism do you have in place that you will continue to maintain the proposed conditions that primarily you're not selling alcohol, it is ancillary?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Yes, that again is an interesting question, and one, of course, that licensing committees have struggled with when it comes to considering sales of alcohol from garage forecourts. And there has been, as I'm sure your legal advisor will be entirely familiar, a significant weight of judicial consideration of this. And one has to simply look at the financial accounts of the business to see whether there is a primary transaction of sale of alcohol or whether that's due to bread and meat sales. So the control comes through the accounts of the company, which will show whether sales are through alcohol or through bread and meat. So there is a mechanism in place. And as I say, it is no different in some respects to the tests that are applied already for garage forecourts.
Yes, thank you very much. As a case of Suckerton C, really, Councillor Farquhar, you know, the intention is there, the undertaking is given, and as to where the business goes, then it can always come under review if that changes. But I think it's a case of what's being applied for today. And the other matter which you raised with regard to deliveries of alcohol, it's covered, I think, well in condition 8 for your assurance, for consideration that all deliveries are made by a reputable courier and or direct employee, and we've already heard that they've all been trained, and I've got confirmation from Sarah that the certificates are all indeed sound. We had certificates to follow, Mr. Payne, but no certificates. But Sarah's very kindly, Mrs. Rogers has very kindly confirmed that they checked them all over and she's content with them. And if she's content with them, we certainly are.
Well, very good. I'm grateful. I do apologise that they were rather late in coming to you.
Don't worry. Lot to be done. Thank you very much for those questions, Councillor Farquhar.
If I may, Chair, my second question, that was a supplementary one, but absolutely it does. My second question is actually relating to the photos. Where is it proposed on the premises that the display of alcohol, or where alcohol will actually be on display? If that can be pointed out on the photographs.
Yep, thank you.
That's probably better one for Mr. Bondira to respond to, if that's possible.
Okay, Mr. Bondira, if you'd like to point out, we've got some very nice photographs. I think it's the second set, but if you'd like to try and take us through, we're on the second set of photographs where we've got a glass wall at the end, and we've got a cash register in front of us. So where would the alcohol be?
So what you see there is next to the cash register, there's like a shelves with a mirror on them, and there's like 3 shelves. And primarily, we just hope out there on the left, you see some products there at the moment, but obviously they will be removed once the alcohol license has been granted, and display of alcohols on those shelves there. So nothing like among vast of stocks, basically a couple of posh wines and stuff like that, craft beers, premium beers.
So in answer to your question, Councillor Farquhar, it's a cordoned off area there. It's well behind the cash desk, and I'm relieved to see that there's some small shelves there, and that will contain the alcohol. Is that clear for everybody? Is that clear for you as well, Councillor Williams? Are you happy with that, Councillor Farquhar? Yeah.
Yes, I'm very reassured. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Looks perfect.
May I just ask one further question, because it was mentioned about craft beers, etc. I know that sometimes there is a misunderstanding of what premium and specialist nature alcoholic drinks are. So would the applicant be able to give an outline of perhaps some examples that they plan to stock should the license be granted?
Mr. Bondira, if you'd like to answer that, although I did look at your website and I don't know whether alarmed or pleased, but I saw your EV Vino Limited. I looked at the website, and on there it says, I hope it's one case of Kumara for £148. So it's fairly upmarket as to the costings. I don't think it's something that somebody's going to have to good think about buying a fine wine, I think. But of course, if you'd like to answer Councillor Farquhar's question, I'm sorry I interjected there. Mr. Bandera.
Of course, yes. Well, the price, just to correct it, is not for the one case. That is actually for the bottle of wine. So there'll be over 100 pints, which are imported from the Czech Republic, and they have won some special wine competition in Italy a couple of years back.
I understand, right.
And with regards to the premium beers, what we're thinking, we haven't really searched up the market as such, but what we would like to do, perhaps get local breweries and basically see the stuff like whatever the crafted stuff they've got. So not cans of 4 of Heineken or whichever you can find in off licenses. But
a well-known
brand, yes.
Well,
my apologies. But yeah, we would be looking into something more like that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Thank you for teasing that out. It was extremely useful. So, Councillor Williams, I did ask if you had any questions for the applicant, and you didn't. With the opportunity for Mr. Bulbul to ask questions, but he's not here. But I feel that the issues that he would perhaps raise would be based around his objections. And I am so content thus far that I do feel that we've had an answer. Whether the answers are satisfactory to the subcommittee will be a matter for us at a later stage. But we have received that answer. I don't think we can possibly tease that out any further. It's very difficult when the objector isn't present. So I think that we've covered all angles there. So Mrs. Rogers, do you have any further questions for the applicant? Thank you.
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for those reports, getting them to us so that we were able to have all the consolidated information in front of us. It's been extremely useful. And also for reading through all those certificates. That must have taken some time. We're grateful to you, Mrs. Rogers. Thank you. So it is now an opportunity for other persons who would make their representations. Now, we don't have the other persons present, but we do have the letters of objection, and the main pivotal points are prevention of crime, disorder, public nuisance, public safety, protection of children from harm, and the objector has stated that he felt that the applicant may be inexperienced in the sale of alcohol. I think that we've heard from both Mr. Bondira and his representative, Mr. Payne, that he is indeed experienced and has been experienced to the period of 10 years in this regard. I am looking at other issues here, but I don't think that there's anything here which would be considered to be within the mitigations of a licensing objective. Causing fear and annoyance to residents and shopkeepers. I think that's very much a Thwaites issue as well, so it's not something we can perhaps consider. If there's anything else in there that any other members feel that I've overlooked, then please do speak. And if Mrs. McNamara feels there's anything she'd like to comment on, but I think for the entirety, the objections are of a similar nature. In fact, 5 are the same. So I think we've covered those. So I hope that Mr. Bulbul, that we've done our best to cover. Mr. Payne.
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm just conscious that I missed one condition that we volunteered, which wasn't there previously, and does arise from a representation, it's right for me to be thorough and make sure that we cover everything. And that was to do with customers leaving. And you'll see at condition 20 that we proposed that there will be signage displayed to encourage customers to leave the premises in a respectful way for neighbours. So that was added on as well. I do apologise, it's one that I missed because we put it at the end.
No, that's absolutely fine. And thank you for that confirmation that that's absolutely in order. Other persons make representations. We've not been able to do that. Questions of the other persons, I hope I've covered together with your support, Mr. Payne, with regard to your latter condition there. So there are no questions, I'm afraid, will be able to be put to the objector because sadly he's not here. So Mr. Payne and Mr. Rogers, I will demur on that question. So we are now at the stage where all parties are given an opportunity, all parties present will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. Regrettably, Mr. Bulbul isn't with us, but I hope we've managed to cover his objections and his concerns, and genuine concerns, of course. So, Mr. Payne, your opportunity to sum up, you have the floor.
Thank you. I will be very brief indeed. This is an application for a premises where what it does is the name of the premises. It is a premises selling bread and beer, and it would like to offer a limited range of premium alcohol as a result of what it normally sells. We have put together this comprehensive list of conditions, which does have the support of all of the responsible authorities. I think it's fair to say the conditions actually go further, as you've heard from me, than the responsible authorities have asked, and that is as a result of those representations. I'm conscious that you had no representations from any of the other authorities, such as licensing, such as planning, such as environmental health. There simply are no issues here. What we say is that this is an application for a relatively small sale of alcohol over very restricted times, finishing at 6 o'clock in the evening. That's what's been applied for. And I can do no more really than commend the application to you and ask that you grant it in the terms that we have applied for, but substituting the various parts of conditions with the consolidated conditions that we've provided for you. Thank you, Chair. I'm very grateful for the time the committee has allowed us today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. And Mr. Bondira, you're so enthusiastic about your application. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered it all at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bondira. And Mrs. Rogers, last by no means least, did you have anything that you'd like to add? Thank you.
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we move then to item 5 of this substantive, and I will now conclude the hearing. And at the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with our legal advisor and our clerk, and we'll deliberate. A notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that is today, July 19th. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'll ask our legal advisor, please, Mrs. McNamara, if you'd kindly explain the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. McNamara.
Thank you, Chair. There's a right of appeal against the subcommittee's decision, and that's an appeal to the Magistrates' Court, and the time period starts 21 days from notification in writing.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Mr. Payne, Mr. Bondira and officers and members, thank you very much. And we will now adjourn and make our deliberations. Thank you very much and good afternoon to you. Thank you.